Hour 2 Overdrive continues. Brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line of the final score. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan, TSN 1050, TSN app, home smart speaker up on TSN 4. Our buddy Bruce Boudreau will join us here in a moment, get his take on the All-Star weekend. Beautiful weather all weekend, a lot of people outdoors, right? It was awesome. Yeah, I took my kids to the park yesterday. Looked like a Sunday in July. Like it was rocking at the park.
There was a guy jogging. I mean, it was downtown. Just shorts and a T-shirt outside. And I'm like, I left leaves for the longest time. And then it snowed. And I'm like, they're done. The leaves are staying there forever. I raked leaves in February and cleaned up my backyard.
Nice.
And I'm like, damn you, snow. Like if it snows, it's just sweat. Like you just don't see it. It's not a problem. Right. But no snow. Everything's just sitting there. And it's like, I guess I got to do it.
You know what I saw yesterday? I was driving home. There's a little 9-hole pitch and putt by me.
Don't even tell me.
People there?
Guy teeing it?
No, there was staff on the grounds doing something. Like I think they plan on possibly opening up the shop. Like there's a real chance. Because, man, it's supposed to be like 8 degrees on Friday. There are lunatics in this city that would go out and play if it's 4 or 5 degrees.
Keep active, and we'll do this again down the road. We appreciate it.
Enough. Thank you. We don't need to play that all the time when we're talking about something else.
But why not on March 15th open up? But the thing is, there's nobody to work at the golf courses. It's just a dream. You've got me excited, but it's just a dream.
I'm just saying what I saw. I saw something, and it kind of piqued my interest. I'm like, this could be maybe moving in a direction where I'm not saying it's going to open in the next 2 or 3 days, but maybe in the next 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. Maybe they're thinking early March as opposed to early April.
Well, if it's +8 on Friday, Duthie's guy in Hamilton, they'll be open.
Yes, they probably will be playing.
Is that goat track or no?
No, that's a great track. It's a great spot.
No, what's the one when Drager took you to that goat track?
That's up by me. I'm not going to name it. I'm sure
we're not going to name the guy. But my point is I think you guys should be careful there because you're going to get all excited, be +8, and then the following week there's going to be a blizzard, and you know what's going to happen. Then all hell's going to break loose.
Yes.
Don't get too excited. I'm telling
you,
it's nice to enjoy the sunshine. It's nice to see what this week is going to unfold. I still think there's going to be one massive dump of snow.
Yeah,
and I'm
coming.
concerned that's coming. Everybody gets excited. They get the clubs out. Jean shorts guys rolling around, or there's a guy with the top down. Like Gino Reda will be driving his car with the top down because it's +8.
Yeah.
And then what'll happen? You know what'll happen? There's going to be a massive snow dump.
Probably.
And everyone's going to be pissed off.
Listen, take advantage while you can.
I agree.
What are you going to do? Complain because it's nice right now? I mean, it's nice now, so take advantage of it while you can.
I agree.
Leafs and Raptors are both in action tonight. Ilya Samsonov will get his 4th straight start. And I'm curious, what he looks like coming out of a break. I'm curious what John Tavares looks like. I guess Tyler Bertuzzi cut his hair for a great cause. And so maybe he's going to knock the rust off. I don't know if a haircut is going to have any effect on his play whatsoever.
Hazy, a lot of question marks, like you said. And for a team that they need to come out of, everybody is kind of like middling around that, like wild card, kind of the 3rd spot in the division. It's like, everyone is saying the same thing. It's like the playoffs start for us, unless you're one of those teams that have a redonkulous lead, and you're not going to blow it up. Like you're not going to gas it at this particular point. It's going to be great hockey coming down the stretch. Everybody says there's like 4 different phases to an NHL season. Training camp, the first part of the season, after the All-Star game, and then playoffs is the last one. So things are going to ramp up. It's going to be great hockey. It should be great
Absolutely.
hockey.
And listen, the Leafs, they've been inconsistent all year. They've had ups and downs, but, they still have an opportunity here to feel very good about themselves by the end of the season, by, going into the playoffs, right? Like you probably need a couple of additions. You need to figure out who's in net and make sure you've got confidence in that. But there's still an opportunity here for them, I think, to play their way up. Now, that can go both ways, right? They could play their way down, and all of a sudden you're like, man, this just isn't it. And based on what we've seen so far, they've been an inconsistent team. Like, they have not been a great hockey team. They've been a good team, not a great hockey team.
Yeah, they need more stability. You're right. Like, they need more stability where you know what you're going to get from them nightly. And if they get that going, then you can predict where they're going to end up. If they're going to end up in that top 3 or in a wild card spot. But you can, if they get a stretch of games here that they live up to their potential or play to their potential, then let's see what they've got here.
Exactly, and that's what is available to them. They play the games, they write the script, they determine how people are going to feel about whether or not this is their season, not their season, all that kind of stuff. You still have a lot of runway to figure that out. Here's a former Maple Leaf, longtime NHLer, NHL coach, NHL Network analyst, one of our good friends here joining us on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Here's Bruce Boudreau. How you doing, Bruce?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you today?
We're doing very well. Did you enjoy your All-Star festivities this weekend?
You know, it was really a lot of fun at Fanfare, to be quite honest. I was not shocked, but very surprised at how many people were there. And anytime you get a chance, I really like talking hockey with the fans and that. And so it was a lot of fun for me. And it was a lot of fun. You know, you guys, when you're on the radio or TV for 2-3 hours straight talking, boy, I mean, it gets a little tough sometimes.
Yeah, well, it can lead to some awkwardness at times, or I don't know. My understanding is you ran into the O-Dog. Do you want to tell us about your little stop and chat with Jeff O'Neill?
You know what? I didn't recognize him at first, but I mean, I was with my wife, but then he told me that he's had 3 cars stolen in the last little while, and I felt sorry for him.
But Brucey, tell him the awkward part of the first part of our interaction. My fly was down. That was the awkward part.
Oh yeah, my wife looks at him. She goes, hey, I don't want to say anything, but she starts stammering and goes, your fly is down. And then as soon as we leave, the first question I ask her is, what are you looking down there for? But anyway.
Well, so was it down like for hours? Were you doing stop and chats with fans? And
no, it got sorted out. It was all good.
Okay.
Yeah, it was all good.
All right. Well, that's a lot to unpack there. The flies down, the cars. There's a lot going on down there at that fan fest.
You guys are going to be thinking a lot worse than what it really was.
I see. Okay.
Just a little bit, a little nudge there.
There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Well, yeah, I mean, listen, it seemed to go off about as well as it possibly could. Everyone's got a different view on the All-Star game. We were discussing coaching the All-Star game, and I know you got a chance to do that. Like, what was that experience like for you when being around the guys and I guess being expected to kind of continue to work, even though maybe it could have been an off week for you at that point?
No, you know what? I would give up a week's work or a week's holiday for that any day of the week, every time. But I was lucky enough to do it in LA when they had the 100 best players time and that, and it was really great to meet all the stars from yesteryear and supposedly the 100 best players ever. But the only thing wrong when you're a coach, you're so damn competitive. You hate to lose, and you're out there, and you want the players to work hard all the time. And sometimes, like, I forgot. Like, I mean, hey, it's an all-star game. The guys are on a break, and I was getting mad at them, and I'd slap myself when it was all over, saying, Bruce, come on, relax a little bit. But you love to see the competitiveness, and I love the All-Star game. Not only that it was in Toronto, and I thought they did a fabulous job with it all, but I mean because it was more competitive, and you've seen the effort a lot more than you've seen in recent All-Star games. And I mean, even there was no defense played, which was great. It made it exciting. There was more 2-on-1s than any time I can ever remember. But you could see them skating up and down the ice and competing. And I thought that was great, the great part about it.
Brucey, what about your own team coming out of the break? I mean, some teams have had 5 to 7 days, then the All-Star break, right back into action. Is it just a different time now where you're not concerned about guys just not being ready? Because there's a lot of teams, we just talked about it, Bruce, where it's go time and they got to win some games, and it might be like, what's your biggest concern as a coach, guys being off the ice for like 10 days?
Well, I mean, that's your biggest concern. And I will say this, like 5, 6, 7 years ago, I mean, the first day out of the break or the first game out of the break is you only have, I think you're allowed one morning skate, and that's it. But the games would end up 7-6, 6-5, high scoring affairs. Because I mean, you got to get back into that whole routine again. But I will tell you this about the Leafs, and in my opinion, anyway, I thought they made great strides when they went and played in Vancouver, then in Seattle the next night, and then they had to play Winnipeg twice. And I believe that they realized that how hard you have to work every game against good teams. And I really think that was a real good jump start in the right direction for your inconsistencies of not being consistent. Because I thought the Seattle game, they had to work so hard, and it was a back-to-back, and I think all of a sudden that kicked in, and they did the same thing against Winnipeg twice. So I'm hoping that it was something that they will continue to do, and the break wasn't something that they all relaxed, and it takes a long time for them to get back up to that stage again. Because when they wanted to play good, they played really good.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Bruce, how much of that you need to see in order for you to get to a point where you're like, all right, they've reestablished where maybe we thought they should be coming into the season, and they've reestablished themselves as a serious contender. Like, do you need to see 10 more games, 12 more games? Because they've been largely inconsistent all year, in order for you to really be like, all right, I'm believing what I'm seeing here, and these guys can actually make some noise.
Well, I mean, I think if you use a 10-game segment, quite frankly, where they go 8-2 or 7-2-1, then you can, and it's, I mean, you can play really good and lose. So I mean, that's going to happen. But if they played with that consistency in a 10-game segment, I think you can really draw on that experience and go the rest of the way. But I mean, a lot of times it's too good, too bad, one good, one bad, and you go, you don't, as a coach, you don't know what you're getting every night, and that becomes a struggle because not only collectively as a team, but individually as a player. If he's an inconsistent player, you don't know whether you can play him 18, 20 minutes on a nightly basis, or you really got to watch him. Some nights he's 10, sometimes he's 20, and so I think a 10-game segment would be where if they played consistent hockey like they've played the last 3 or 4 games. I think that would be something you could say, okay, we know they can play like this all the time.
Brucey, if Brad Treliving came to you and said, what would you like? Say you're coaching the Leafs, and he asked you, where would you start as far as a trade or anything like that? Would you say, I need a defenseman, I need another forward? Looking at this roster, where do you think, or where would you start with some of the changes to help add to this group?
Well, I mean, obviously, just as a spectator, I would think that a right-handed, good defensive defenseman would be really up there on my list. And I mean, when I think of Toronto, I think of, and I don't know if you could ever get Radek Gudas out of Anaheim, but Tanev's on an expiring contract. Those are the kind of guys that I think the Leafs, if they needed anybody, could use something like that, and a really solid third line player. Like, I mean, because the one thing I do know is that in the playoffs, you need to have 4 lines going. So I mean, or I shouldn't say third line, I should say bottom 6 player, like a really, really solid guy that's done it before. And like when they got Ryan O'Reilly last year, I thought it was a really good get. But I mean, because you need 4 lines in the playoffs. Just look at the last Stanley Cup team that didn't have 4 lines going. I mean, Vegas last year, their 4 lines, I mean, their fourth line almost played as much as their first line. The balance is going to be so important. I mean, you've got to play up to 28 games, And I mean, you're not going to be healthy. You're going to play with injuries. So that third and fourth line, they've got to be right up there. And I think if the Leafs could improve that a bit, then I think they'd be a lot stronger.
With Bruce Boudreau, you look at the start that William Nylander had. It was off the charts. You know, he got the contract. He was at the All-Star game. He participated in the skills competition. Very few players got a chance to do that. But he had slowed down a lot, you know, leading into the break, Bruce. And he's at 61 points. They got 35 games left. How will you analyze his play the rest of the way? In other words, like, does he have to hit 100 points now for you to say, all right, he completed this great season? Or do you need to see, like, effort, defensive play, physicality? Like, how are you viewing William Nylander down the stretch?
It's a good question. I mean, a lot of times we judge people on their points. I would keep my judgment. He's a really important part of the Leafs team. So to me, it would be wins and losses, because if the Leafs win, no matter what his points total are, if the Leafs, you know, in the last 30 games went 22-7 and won or something, and they won, no matter what his points are, you knew he's going to be a valuable contributor because he plays 20 minutes every night. If they went to 500 and he even averaged a point a game, or they ended up fourth and in the wild card spot, I would say, like, it was disappointing after the first 20 games what the rest of his season ended up, and everybody would start saying, well, as soon as he got the contract, this happened. I don't believe him. I know the family, I know the player. You know, I think he's been a really good contributor this year, but I would judge him on wins and losses, because that's what we judge everybody on, and whether we like it or not. I mean, if the Leafs were to win the 3 rounds or the Stanley Cup, and Tavares still was under a point a game, wouldn't you call it a great year? Or, you know, I mean, for him, because they need that guy to play well. And so, I mean, it's wins and losses for me, not points.
Brucey, how would you handle the goaltending situation? Would you just kind of ride out Samsonov? When would you kind of believe as a coach that Samsonov is back to being the guy after what he went through, or would that always scare the hell out of you moving forward?
Well, I think it's always going to be back there. His whole career has been a little bit of that, up and down, up and down. I thought last year he had a great year. I mean, I think, you know, he's going to be playing, from what I read today, you know, Wall's not going to be game ready yet for a little bit. So, I mean, I would, you know, see what Samsonov does for the next little while. And, I mean, he's proven in the last few games that he can do it when he's focused. And, I mean, if he stays focused and doesn't let other things affect him, he can be a very good goaltender. I mean, you look at his numbers last year; they were really good. And I mean, he started since he's come back, they've been really good again. I mean, I would keep running with them and ease Wall back in when he gets fully healthy.
So Edmonton returns tomorrow night in Vegas. They've won 16 in a row. Coming off a break, if you're Chris Knobloch, like if you're coaching that team, Bruce, what are you saying before the game? How are you getting this back on track and acknowledging, you know, the history that could be at hand, but also, you know, the age-old saying it's just a game, one game at a time. Like how would you expect to balance what's hanging over the Oilers right now?
Well, I mean, I think you've heard me say that. I mean, I had, win the week was my saying all the time. So, I mean, they're starting a new week. You forget what's happened in the past. You forget, like, I mean, and it works both ways. If you've been on a 5-game losing streak, you don't want to, you don't want to dwell on that. And it's the same thing with winning. Let's start here. We're starting this new week off. Let's win the week and we'll be happy. Don't worry about the winning streak. I mean, if you play good things are going to happen. But I wouldn't be putting all my eggs in and say, boys, we got to win. This will be the 17th. This will be the record. Let's just start fresh and let's win the week. And if we win the week, good things are going to happen. And like, to me, between Vegas, it's probably going to be between Vegas and Edmonton for second spot in the Pacific. And so it's a big game. You take away the winning streak. It's a big game for the division right now, because that home ice has been very, very important in the Pacific Division the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, Vegas is a 5-point buffer right now, but Edmonton has 5 games in hand, which is wild. Like, it's a huge game. Like, it's crazy. You go on NHL.com or TSN.ca or whatever, you look at the win column.
Right.
Like, Edmonton's won 16 in a row. Vegas has
crazy.
lost their last game.
Well,
like,
Vegas is banged up too. Like
Yeah.
they're really struggling injury wise.
big time.
Yeah, and it's tough. Like, I mean, I know it's a different league, but I was on the team in 1984 that we set the American League record at that time at 16 games in a row. And every game, there's more pressure on you to keep the thing going and going. Now, I think the break has really helped Edmonton. So, like, if they were just to get their mind fresh again and think of it as 1 and not 17. But, I mean, it's going to be really interesting because I think this is a more pivotal game for the division, and it's going to probably be Edmonton's toughest game in a while, and we'll really see what they're made of coming after that game.
Yeah, no kidding. And like Vegas is one, even if they fall behind the pack here, no one's going to be sleeping on them if they're healthy come playoff time. Like, they will be ready to play. They will be ready to go.
They will. They will be ready. Butch knows how to coach winning teams, and you know what? The Stanley Cup champions very, very rarely go down easy.
100% accurate. We'll see where it goes. Always great catching up with you, Bruce. Thank you for doing this.
All right, no problem. Talk to you guys later.
You got it. Bruce Boudreau, the NHL Network and Leafs alumni himself, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline.
A lot to unpack there. I got to address, the awkward interaction, but I do respect it because, do you remember, wasn't it your first conversation with Laviolette where he was flying low?
My first 2 conversations with Lavi. One was flying low, and the other one he had a giant booger in his nose. And I had
and you
to
pointed
tell
him out, right?
Yeah, and he said it was just he hated me from then on. Looking back, I probably shouldn't have done it, but I saw Brucey. I don't know why he didn't recognize me. I sat beside him for 6 hours on trade deadline center last year. But anyway, I said, "Hey, Brucey," and he said, "This is my wife." And his wife looked at me and she goes, "I don't know how else to tell you this, but you're flying low right now." And I was like, "Okay." And
I love that. So, yeah,
I think it's awesome.
I think you got to appreciate that. You're out in public. There's thousands of people around. You're a public figure. Everyone knows who you are, except for Bruce. And you're flying low. I think you want that info, but at the same time, I know where my mind would go. It'd be like, if I had this thing rocking this way the whole time, like, were you walking around?
I was sitting down. It was like halfway to. It wasn't like a full. But hey, I appreciate Brucey's wife letting me know.
All right.
I love it.
I love it. Yes. Well, we appreciate that too. We appreciate Bruce being down there. FanFest was a big hit. I was happy to see that it continued yesterday, even though like all the players had dispersed and were gone.
Dude, there was a lot of people at the convention center. Like it was rammed with people. It was really cool. I was walking out and there was a booth. It was a really nice thing for me because I haven't seen the guy in a long time. And I just looked to see who was signing autographs, and it was Matt Sundin. And
Really?
I went up and sat beside him. I gave him a hug. It was just a nice thing to see him. I hadn't seen him in person in a long time. So it was nice. It was nice seeing all the guys there.
Nice. And a lot of the video, like the access you get, players are moving around and, they have an itinerary and stuff. But I saw a bunch of video just of friends and stuff posting. Hey, there's Matthews. He stops and says hello. And, hey, there's Mitch Marner. And Marner stops and takes a pic. And, like the players, and I think specifically, I'm sure all of the players, I have no doubt about that. But the Toronto players, when it's in your hometown, the majority of the people down at FanFest and down at the games and stuff are probably Leaf fans, right?
Yeah.
And I think from that standpoint, if you're the Leafs, it was probably a very proud moment, proud weekend. You hosted it, and your guys, I thought, represented really well, and that's always been the case.
And Matthews especially, he had that one kid that he kind of made the connection with.
With the skates, That was
with the
awesome.
skates, and it was just a really nice thing for a guy to take time like that because it's busy. Everybody's trying to pull you in all different directions. And Austin Matthews is a superstar, and for him to kind of take that time, it was just a really nice thing to watch. I love watching clips like that where
I
it's
agree.
It's a special thing.
Yeah, and by all accounts, like he's really committed a lot of his personal time to like sick kids, and I get the impression a lot of Leafs do that. The Leafs are committed to it, and at times like that needs to be highlighted. Also, I get it.
But I have a ton of respect for not having the camera there every time.
Exactly.
There's some people that only do it if there's a camera there. If you're doing it behind the scenes and nobody knows about it, it's just that much better.
Yeah,
it really is.
No, it says a lot about your character. It says a lot about who you are and how you operate, and understanding what you mean. Right, like those guys, the four of them that were down there. You could include Tavares, others. There's a bunch of Leafs that obviously mean a lot to people in the city. But Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Riley, those guys have been around a long time, man. Like Morgan Riley's been here 11 years. Matthews, Nylander, and Tavares, they're into their 8th season.
Yeah, year 8.
Like they are Torontonians. Like outside of Mitch, none of the other 3 guys weren't born and raised here, didn't live here, but they are a part of the city now. And I get the impression they take pride in that. I get the impression that, again, they're all good guys, good citizens, represent the team well, the city well. And that means a lot. Like when you talk about kids and you talk about interactions and families and all that kind of stuff, that goes a long way. So I credit them. I credit the Leafs. Like by all accounts, they put on a really good show. And I think that applies to a lot of the players. A lot of the players seem to show up, right attitude, had a good time. Sometimes you're going to be out of your comfort zone when you're mic'd up. These guys are not professional broadcasters or comics or actors or whatever. It's not going to. There's going to be some awkwardness. There's going to be some dead air. That's going to happen. But for the most part, you bring the right approach, right attitude. I think that's all you can ask for. Yeah. And I think that's largely what we saw over the weekend. All right, Mike Golick Jr. from Vegas in about an hour. Chris Johnston will join us as well. CJ was in London today for the London Police press conference. We'll get his update on that, what came out of it. I was just seeing Darren Dreger, I think, tweeting out that it sounds as if the NHL teams of these 4 players that are still in the NHL will likely get cap relief.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that Duthie was interviewing Dregs about that. And
right.
The league has to make a decision because you're right. These guys, if they ever play again, it's years from now because I think this process is going to take a while. Mm-hmm. So the teams are going to have some form of a judgment on cap relief or something because these guys aren't playing.
Right. It seems like that's where it's moving. So CJ will join us in about a half an hour. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, this week we're giving away tickets, Leafs Flyers, February 15th. Plus, we're throwing in a $250 Vanilla Visa prepaid card with each pair of tickets to make it the ultimate game night. Vanilla Visa prepaid cards are available for purchase at Petro-Canada. Today's player of the day for the Maple Leaf lineup of the week is Wayne Simmons.
Wow.
Wayne Simmons.
Yeah.
Man, I loved watching him in Philly. He was so dynamite. Like, he'd score 30, have 15 fights. Oh,
power play, front of the net.
Unreal.
Punching goalies.
Yeah.
Did he did I read this right? Did he unofficially or officially retire the other day or whatever?
I think so.
Kinda?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was doing an interview with I can't remember.
Athletic or something. I don't know who
it
was.
Might have been. And I guess he kind of let the cat out of the bag. Like, yeah, I think I'm done, but not official, but it's official. I'm sure he was waiting to see if he, got any people,
any nibbles?
Any feelers or anything like that. Like, it's possible he could go to Europe or something, but he's had a great career. He's got a young family.
Great career. The no nibbles is a tough pill to swallow, man. When you're the man for a long time and you're the go-to guy, and the agent says, sit around, we'll get a call, and it's like, Kiermaier talked about it, talking to us. He's like, no one was interested about the Jays. So you only need one team, but when you don't get the one, it's a tough one.
How about Bill Belichick? Like, Bill Belichick is not employed. Mike Vrabel is a really good coach.
Pete Carroll.
Yeah.
But those guys, like, I think that they could get hired tomorrow, but it wouldn't be the right situation. They got to go to the right situation. Don't you think they've afforded themselves that?
It's still insane that organizations that are dying to turn things around regardless of what Billy Boy's demands were, it's insane that those 3 coaches are still out there. And they take the chance on this whiz kid offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator and leave those guys aside. I do understand that it's 2024 and that you might want to look for some fresh blood. But to leave all that winning to the side, that's crazy stuff.
Well, I mean, you could argue you're right, like fresh blood, but like have some of that fresh blood delivered wins? You know, have they delivered championships? All of that type of stuff. Like,
well, I guarantee a bunch of these hires next summer will back next spring. Same thing.
Look who's in the Super Bowl, man. Andy Reid's not exactly a spring chicken. Like,
no.
Andy's been a head coach for like 30 years, 25 years.
Right.
You know, even Shanahan's been running the show in KC for a while. Right, and he's been in the NFL forever. His dad, Mike Shanahan, obviously was a coach forever. Like, that's, I don't know. I mean, you look at the Super Bowl, you're like, seems to be a pretty good example of why maybe you'd want experience in that position.
Well, even look at Vegas Golden Knights. Like Bruce Cassidy knows how to coach.
Yeah,
you know, it's not a guy that they're taking a chance on who's progressive and all, like it's guy who's a hell of a coach, and Vegas was like, we're looking for an upgrade. We're going to grab this guy. Like, and you know, Pete DeBoer moves on. Like these coaches, like Peter Laviolette's a hell of a coach. Like you look at it. I was going to laugh because you may not have seen it, but when he was behind I saw him smile. It looked like it hurt him to see, like he doesn't smile that much. He had this like smile when they were interviewing him behind the bench, and I was dying.
He had a good time. He had a
great time, and good for him. But it was like, it looks like he's such a serious guy, and he's such a nice guy. I've run into him on the street in Nashville before, and had some great chats with him. Like he's a wonderful man, but he's so hardened. Like he was being interviewed and he was smiling. I'm like, God, it doesn't look natural. It didn't look natural for him behind the bench without a scowl on his face, you know?
Yeah, it probably applies to everyone. I mean, Rick Tocchet was behind the bench having a good time, and you know, Rick, that's not his type of hockey. 3-on-3 skills competition is not Rick Tocchet. No. That's not how he operates. You know, Jim Montgomery, every coach, like there's no happy coach in pro sports. That's a good poll question, or just throw it out there because I don't have an answer for it. Like, who would you consider it might be Darko, actually.
Yeah, it is.
It might be
say that.
Darko.
Charlie Bongo's here. What was that guy's name?
Charlie Montoyo. Yeah, Charlie was happy-go-lucky.
Happy,
he was generally in a pretty good mood.
I got one guy for you. John Cooper. Like John Cooper is now he gets animated behind the bench and that, but if you have conversation with him, he's pretty even keeled. Like he's not he jokes around a little bit, has a little bit of fun. Like,
yeah, I think there are guys who will have a little fun. Pete DeBoer's great at that. Pete we have on a few times a year. He's awesome. He'll joke around. It's not that I guess it's just while they're playing, like who's happy? Is there a coach in the NHL that's ever happy? Until they actually win
every
something.
game is the biggest game of your life, and it's like after a win, you might have a cold beer and say that was a great night, and then you forget about it, and then the stress of the next game comes, prepping for it, making sure the guys are ready for it. That's why the guy's hair, Sheldon Keefe's hair, is going white. You look at any NHL coach, their hair goes white within a month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The only guy I could think of off the top of my head is the guy we just had on, Bruce Boudreau. Now, Bruce would get animated,
right.
but he was, for the most part, he'd have a smile back to her sometimes.
You're right. Bruce is an example of a guy that he did seem, maybe it's just his disposition, who he is, just seems like such a great guy, and he is a great guy, that you just assume, like, I don't know, is he getting rattled? That's why the whole HBO stuff was so shocking, because it was Bruce Boudreau who was blowing a gasket in between periods, and I think it really threw people off.
Right.
But, yeah, beyond that, like, there's just a lot of angry guys behind the bench. Like, a lot of people in the league who are not happy.
Well, think of guys like Pop, and Belichick. Like, they're just...
Belichick, John Tortorella. Paul Maurice has usually got a little scowl on back there.
Well, think about being responsible for 25 grown men to all be motivated to play their best. And it's just a lot. It's a lot to manage. You're managing a lot of personnel. It's just a stressful gig, no matter what way you look at it.
Yeah. And you got to be serious. Like obviously, it's a game. Why would you be out there smiling and giggling and laughing? But it does seem as if, especially in more physical sports, the NHL, NFL, it's like you just got guys who are miserable on the sideline or behind the bench.
Or Pat Quinn yelling at the ref. Like
Yeah.
They could have the greatest day of their life. They can go behind the bench, their team's all revved up, and then the ref will make a bad call, and that just sends them
See you later.
That's what happens.
Yeah. Like if you're Chris Knobloch, the head coach of the Oilers, you've won 16 in a row. Yet you're going into Vegas Tuesday. You're probably really nervous. Like you're like, what kind of approach is my team going to have? What have they been doing? Vegas is going to show up to play. Yes, they've had injury problems, but they may have a couple of guys who have recovered between now and then. They've got their goalie back. Let's see what you got. Like that's a big game tomorrow night.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, Bruce Cassidy, he'll have a scowl on behind the bench. They'll be ready to go. All right, Chris Johnston in about 25 minutes, and Mike Golick Jr. from the Super Bowl ahead of Media Night tonight. Our best bets brought to you by FanDuel as well. It is Waste Management Week. Kind of sucked at Pebble. They got rained out, only 54 holes. But, that's going to happen sometimes. I know there's a lot of live jokers out there like, oh, look at that. No cut, 54 holes.
I saw that.
Interesting stuff.
That's a hell of a way to finish it, though, for a guy to go out and shoot 60 on that golf course.
Right.
Like, I don't care what the conditions are. 60 at Pebble, course record.
It's crazy.
I know.
Crazy.
It is. But still, it's like the leaderboards, man. It just doesn't have it's almost like too much to ask. You're getting an elevated event, and then when the top guys aren't on the leaderboard, it's just like...
Yeah. Well, I think where you see it is with the world, like the golf rankings. Our boy Ludwig Oberg, he's changed his name.
Oberg now.
Oberg.
That's
Ludwig
the last one we're
Oberg.
giving him.
Yes, that's it. You get 3 changes, and this is it. Ludwig Oberg is up to number 11 in the world, and he's been phenomenal. And he may have passed Wyndham Clark if they played yesterday. But it's like, okay, but the live guys are going the other way. Like you're telling me this guy should be ahead of Koepka or ahead of DJ or ahead of, whatever. Joaquin Niemann won on live yesterday, and he's crying because he can't play in major tournaments.
Not allowed to cry. You went for the money. You knew the consequences. You can't cry.
I totally agree.
Right.
You knew that was not a sanctioned tour and you were going to lose world golf rankings. You made the choice. Like you can't pretend like you didn't know it. But he is one of the 50 best players in the world. He won at Riv a few years ago. Like
I would love
Niemann
to see
can play
how much.
golf.
I would love to see how much cash guys like Pat Perez and Ian Poulter are stuffing in their jeans for just being there. Because you never hear them like even playing a good round.
Pat Perez. I have no idea. Like who the hell knows what Pat Perez is doing?
But if he's a part of the winning team, he's shoving $3 million in his pocket in a week, and it's like I would love to know how much money those guys have made just for hanging around.
Millions of dollars, millions and millions of dollars, and yet they're probably getting nervous because Rahm went. He was in contention. Tyrrell Hatton was there. Everyone's like Victor Hovland pulled out of the Waste Management. I believe he'll be at Riv next week. That's the report. I don't think he's going to live, but there's a lot of smoke around that. When's he going to go? He's a European guy who may just say, screw it, I'll take $400 million and go. If everyone else is, and now Rory's cool with it, what the hell do I care?
Yeah.
So like if it keeps moving in this direction, guys like Pat Perez, they're going to get squeezed out. And then you could be talking about something very different. All right, Chris Johnston in 20 minutes. Leafs in action tonight. Raptors in action tonight. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050N on TSN 4. OverDrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel. We'll get to our best bets brought to you by FanDuel later this afternoon on the Leafs-Islanders game tonight. We have Bruce Boudreau join us earlier this hour, and I asked him about the evaluation of William Nylander down the stretch because, I think Willie needed the break. He had been kind of stumbling into the break after the signing, and I think he went 7 of 9 games pointless. And he's out there with the big boys, right? He was out there with McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon, Makar, Matthews, Nylander. And I was reading something, I think it was Chip Alexander down in Carolina, indicating that Sebastian Aho was kind of bent out of shape, that he didn't get a chance to partake in the skills competition.
Well, let me guess. He said that after watching Kucherov.
It was Alex. The way I read the tweet was it was Alexander, him reading what he was saying, body language, how he was approaching it, that it sounded like Aho was a little bit miffed that he didn't have a chance to partake. And I'm sure he wasn't alone. Like, I'm sure there were a couple guys that were like, I wouldn't mind $1 million. Exactly. Why aren't I in on this? And then you look at Kucherov and he's out there mailing it in, and you're like, well, what? And quite frankly, they might look at Nylander too and say, before this year, I've been crushing it down in Carolina. I'm the man. They got Matthews already in there. Why is Willie in there over me or whoever? You could go down the list. And I'm sure there's a number of guys who are like, I'm a pretty good player, So
it was a local thing, don't you think? Like, I think you got the Toronto bump on that.
Probably. And listen, the first 40 games of the year, he was unbelievable.
Top 5 scoring. Yeah. You're right.
I mean, the guy, I would say, you look at him in there, JT Miller in there, not to take but those guys aren't the equivalent of Matthews, McDavid, McKinnon, Makar, right? Like,
where is Willie dropped? Like, he was top 5 for a long time. Is he out of that kind of top 5 type of mix? He's still top 10.
Well, he's 11th.
Yeah, he's got 61 points.
Yeah.
But he is now. Now it's really about Matthews chasing him down because Austin's only 3 points back, and I think there's a pretty good chance Matthews is going to finish the season with more points than him. But and I don't think anyone was expecting. I certainly wasn't that he would end up with 125 points or something like that.
I thought he'd get 100 points.
But I thought 100, and I think that should still be considered the bar. I mean, that would be, he should be expected to get to that point. That's 39 points in 35 games.
They got 35 games left, so he's got to get just over a point a game.
That's where he's been for a couple of years.
Well, yeah, he's got to. I mean, last year was it 87 points in 82 games, so that's just over. So he's got to go back to even what he did last year.
That's what his comparable does, gentlemen. Like, that's what 88 in Boston does every single year. 30 to 60 somewhere in the middle and 100 points. That's what Pasta does.
Yeah.
MVP conversations, the go-to guy. Like, you want to make some change in the same ballpark? Those are the expectations. It's
Absolutely.
not like, 1 year maybe, next year maybe.
Oh, I think that should be the case. Like, you do not want to spoil what's been a great year. Boudreau made a very valid point and an accurate one that ultimately winning is what really is going to define all these guys.
But he's the contributor to winning.
But exactly, how do you win? How do you help your team win? If you're Nylander, it's by scoring goals, creating offense and being a dominating offensive force, right? Like that is your role that is going to play a factor in whether or not your team is going to win or lose.
Yeah, it just, I mean, I look at it and he hit the ditch a little bit before the break. If the break rejuvenated him, he's got to get back on track here. And you're right, the points aren't going to flow as freely. We always know how it tightens up here down the stretch, especially there's a lot tighter games. Maybe tonight withstanding. I think the first couple games might be a little bit of a, rust on the game. But if he can get a point a game, get to 95 to 100 points, but they end up making the playoffs and doing something, then nobody cares.
No, it'll be a career. It's going to be a career year for him, likely. Yeah. Period. I mean, he's got to get to, 88 points. He better do that. If he comes down the stretch with 17 points, that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, I mean, the other guy, I would much rather see Nylander, if he stabilizes or just kind of dips a little bit, I'd like to see a rise in Tavares. And that might be tied. The two, Tavares not playing that well or not contributing on the scoreboard might have hurt Willie and vice versa.
Yeah, if they're going to be on a line, absolutely. Yeah. And what has happened here over the progression of Tavares' time is when he got here, it was that guy's going to drive something. That guy's going to drive that line, and other guys are going to have to contribute. Now it's more about if that line's going to cook offensively, I think Nylander's going to be the one to spark it, right? Yeah, and Tavares has got to be opportunistic and got to get in the right places at the right time and basically be a support staff. Yeah. That's kind of what it feels like to me. And we also know the way that Keefe operates, he's probably going to change it up a few times, over the final 35 games.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think if you're Willie, wins and losses, the contract that's done. It's over. It's been signed, sealed, and delivered. You were on pace, for an all-time great Maple Leaf season. You got to get to 100 points now. Like you got to hit 100.
Yeah.
Just like Matthews has got to score 55, or whatever. I think at this point, you look at those two players in particular and what they're chasing. That you've gone this far, you're capable of doing it. You're healthy. You're in your prime. Keep racking up points. Keep scoring goals and putting up numbers.
Matthews 50, like the way he scores goals, he's going to have 50 goals by the end of February.
Probably.
Might.
Yeah. I mean, it's not.
How many
I wouldn't
games
be
they have in
shocked if he
February?
scored 2 tonight and just kept rocking.
So what he does, it's when he gets cooking like that, it's insane. It's crazy to watch.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch.
It really is. And he's at 40. Sam Reinhart's at 37, which is crazy. Like Reinhardt's pushing him even for the Rocket.
Yeah.
You got to keep scoring because Reinhardt at this pace is probably going to score 55, 56 goals.
And you can tell by the clips of the guys mic'd up, like McKinnon talking about it. It's like they're as good as they are. They're in awe of how often that guy scores goals.
Yeah.
Like
well, he
Quinn
is a
Hughes,
unicorn in that area. Yeah, like
exactly.
McDavid in skating, Matthews in goal scoring. There's certain guys where you're like, that guy does something that no one else can do.
Yeah.
And he represents that right now. Final hour coming up. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.